Ciao, I'm Esposito. You know, I just got a really interesting tweet here. Somebody wants to know, how do you make rice pie? I think she's talking about pastiera. You know what? I've got the answer.
Ciao, I'm Esposito, and welcome to the Amalfi Coast.
Don't tell anybody, but I planted 2 French varieties.
You are so smart, Cyril. Come on, get that baseball arm moving. That's it. And if this doesn't say country Italian, inexpensive, cooking from home, I don't know what does. Did I say a little? Right in there. Isn't that beautiful? This is such an earthy dish.
You know, and my grandmother always used the stems too.
This just reminds me so much of childhood.
This is no sweat cooking, really. I could just toss all day.
Perfect.
Ciao!
Making the pastiera, which is a Neapolitan traditional wheat berry pie, starts with making a pasta frolla. And here I am lightly spooning flour into a measuring cup, a dry measure, to show you the proper way to measure flour if you're not weighing it, if you're not using a scale. So it's why this method is called the sprinkle and sweep, because I sprinkled in the flour lightly and I sweep with a knife. That gives me the right amount of flour. So for the pasta frolla, we need 2 cups of unbleached all-purpose flour, which I have right here, and I'm going to put it right into my food processor. So 2 cups of unbleached all-purpose flour, and then to lighten this up a little bit, I like to use a cup of cake flour. Cake flour has a lower protein content than unbleached all-purpose, and it has less gluten, because you want flakiness here. So I like to make a combination of the 2 flours together. You could use all unbleached all-purpose if you wanted to, but I think this makes a really nice combination. Then we want some sugar, so we've got about 2 tablespoons of sugar in here, and 1½ teaspoons of salt. And all you really want to do is whirl this part up, just to blend it a little bit. So I give it a couple hits, and that's it. So that's easy, but it's the next part where you have to really pay attention, because now, to get flakiness from a dough like this, we need to use butter, fat, that's right. And this butter needs to be cold or frozen. Let me show you my little trick, because when I make this pastiera, I like to use butter that I have frozen, and here's a stick that I have frozen. I've got a cheese grater frozen, and I've got more butter frozen. I think you get the idea. And why do I want frozen butter? Well, folks, you want to keep that butter from melting right into the flour. And the minute you start handling butter, your hands are warm. So that's going to create a little bit of softness in the butter. So I want to make sure that I keep it as cold as possible. So this is my trick. Kind of use the paper, and this is unsalted butter. Your cheese grater is cold, and then you just grate. And because the butter is cold, it will not melt into the flour. It will stay separate, and you'll see little pieces of it in the dough. That's what you want. That's going to create the flakiness that you want. You see how cold that is. And now we want to whirl that up, not too much. So put the top back on and give it a few pulses. You don't want to work it too much. But because you've grated it, you see, it takes less time to get it mixed into the flour. All right, that's one part of cold. Now we need eggs. So for this particular recipe, we need 1 large or extra large egg, and we need 1 egg yolk. So don't transfer shell to shell. Make sure your hands are clean, and let the egg white fall into a bowl. There's your second egg yolk. So we want to whirl that up a little bit, because the more you do here, the less you have to work the dough there. So right through the feed tube now, I'm going to put this on and add the egg. I don't want to work that too much. I'm trying to create flakiness. There's the butter and the egg. Now, we need enough water here in order to keep this dough cold, but also to give us a ball of dough that holds together. So I have to eyeball this, and you'll know you have enough by stopping occasionally and feeling this dough. So if you can pick it up, squeeze it, and it holds together, that's where you stop. So that's exactly where we're going to stop. So once I have it, at that point, we have to chill the dough. I said everything is cold, right? So take a piece of paper, plastic wrap. Once you do that, gather it together, kind of into a disc shape. And I don't know if you can see this, but you can see the little pieces of butter have stayed together in the dough. It hasn't really melted into the dough. You cover this, and you want to chill this at least a couple of hours before you're going to use it. So now this goes in the refrigerator. Put it in the refrigerator, and before you came over, I was busy making dough. So here we have a rested dough. Now we have to get a few things out of the way so I can show you how this goes. So on a perfectly clean surface, give yourself a nice wide area to work. So here's our rested dough. And look at how beautiful that looks. Now, what we need to do here is to cut this dough up. I'm not going to use all of it for the pan. I want some for the top, so I'm going to take about 2/3 of it. Save the rest. And while you're working on this piece should stay cold. So I'm going to put that back in the paper. That's going to go back in the fridge. And to make this easier to roll, we want to use parchment paper. This is parchment paper. You can buy it in the supermarket or in a pastry shop. I'm going to put a little bit of flour down on the parchment paper. I'm going to put my dough on top of that. And then I'm going to add just a bit more flour and put this on top. Now, why am I doing this? Well, because I don't want to work too much flour into the dough. Now, you get out your trusty rolling pin and you start rolling this out. And you don't want to really go back and forth over the dough like that. You simply want to go from the center out. And every once in a while, move that paper, rotate that paper around so that you get an even thickness. And then the ideal thing would be to put this back in the refrigerator. Now you could make this part ahead of time. You could actually make the pastiera in kind of 2 steps. You could make the filling one day. You could make the pastry one day. Then when you want to put it together, you are all set, and it's a lot easier to do. This is the traditional Easter pie, and it comes originally from Naples, but now it's made all over Italy. Unfortunately, it is not made at home anymore. Italians usually buy this for Easter. It just wouldn't be Easter without it. A pastiera, sometimes referred to in dialect as a pastide. I'm sure you've heard that word, those of you who have Italian heritage. So you see, I'm rolling this out so I'm going to be able to get it into the size pan that I want to use, which is a 9.5 by 2.5 or 3-inch springform pan. So that looks good. Let's see what we got here. And we want to keep it cold. So if it gets sticky, you're just going to set it right back into the refrigerator. So carefully shimmy off the paper. Carefully shimmy it off. If you get a hole, you can always patch. And now we need to put it into our pan, but I have to wash my hands first before I do that. So now I can get the mold. The cold mold. And here it is. And I'm using a springform pan, a 9-inch springform pan, because traditionally the pastiera is a thick, deep pie, but you could do it in just a regular pie pan if you wanted to. So I'm going to take this dough and flop it right in this pan, just like that. I'm going to use that later. And what you want to do is fit that dough right in there. And it needs to relax a little bit. It may give you a little bit of resistance forming it around the edges, but if you just lay it in there and then go back to it and pinch it, you'll get it formed around the edges. So it just takes a little bit of time. And I like to just sink it right in there and then just go around, go up the sides. You can go as high as you want. You can make it lower if you want to. But I'm putting a lot of filling in this, the wheat berries. If you seem that if you have a lot of excess dough, you can just take it, cut it off at the end. So make sure that you have enough in the base, because you can always cut off the excess. So there is our lined pan. Don't worry about the excess dough, because I'm going to take that off later. Okay, now this goes back in the refrigerator. You want to keep that cold. So I'm going to put it back in the fridge. And if you're going to do this right away, you don't have to cover it, but if you're not, then I would cover it with a little piece of plastic wrap. Get the best, freshest ricotta cheese you can find. You need about 1 pound of ricotta cheese. And then you've got to cook some berries. If you're going to make this the traditional way, here's what you need to do. These are wheat berries. They're loaded, packed with protein. This is the traditional way to make this pie. You would put them in a pan. This is a cup of wheat berries with 2 cups of milk. 2 cups of milk. And you're going to let that cook. And with it, you want to add a vanilla bean. So here is a vanilla bean. This is what they look like when you buy them, you see? And we need to cut that up. So we need to make a little slit. You can put that in whole, but what I like to do is cut a piece and then just make a slit down the center, because that's where all those little seeds are. And you scrape the seeds right into this milk mixture. You put the whole thing in and you let that cook. So we're going to let that go. And all of that wheat is going to absorb that milk. If you're making this the Italian-American version, many people like to use arborio rice, the same rice that you would use for making risotto. That's this. Or they'll use long grain rice. But the wheat berries are the more traditional way to do it. All right, so now we have that. We've got to add some sugar to our ricotta. So you mix in some sugar. And we need a few other flavorings for this. We need, of course, our wheat berries. Here they are cooked. I'm going to take the vanilla bean out. A cup of wheat berries will give you 2 cups of cooked. So in that goes all of it. You mix that around. This makes a very, very hearty pie. And then we need 3 eggs. So you beat those up a bit, just to break them up. They go in. Delicious and rich. And I'll tell you, it isn't Easter in any Italian household without the pastiera. All right, so you get that all mixed really, really well. And now we want to add some cinnamon to this. So let me get some cinnamon, some vanilla, and a few other things. How about oranges? Because orange is often in this. And what I like to use, this is something called Fior di Sicilia. It has a wonderful orangey flavor. So I give that about, a tablespoon or so. You can find this stuff in a pastry shop, or you can find it online. A little bit of vanilla goes in. And of course, some cinnamon. I like cinnamon, so you could put in about a teaspoon and a half. Or if you don't like cinnamon, you could leave it out. So I like it. I'm going to put in a good hefty teaspoon of cinnamon. Mix this all up. And for that orange, if you want that extra orange flavor in there, take a nice beautiful orange and add some of the zest right to the filling, just like that. So you've got that all mixed up. That's your filling. And now we're ready to fill our shell. So get it all mixed really well. It smells absolutely wonderful. And put that aside now and get our shell back to the fridge. Bring our shell and our strips. So there's the shell. Leave these here for a minute. All right, so now what we do is take this and pour it right in there. Get it right in, all of it. Actually, this is better if you make it the day before. And on the day after Easter, the Italians take this to the countryside for something called Pasquetta, which is Little Easter, Easter Monday. Once you have it like that, give it a little shake. And then you have your strips ready, and you carefully lift them off the paper, and you just start laying them right over the filling. Now don't worry about the ends, because you're going to pinch those down at the end. That one kind of got away from me. And you can do either a cross-hatching or you can just lay them separately over the top. I think I want to move that one over just a bit. So I have 4. Okay, and here's my 4th one. And then we can go the other way. And what are you going to do with the scraps? Well, you're going to make little cookies out of those. So as soon as you have all the dough where you want it, we're going to pinch that together. So there's 3. So now I just take this dough and go just like that, right around the edge. Just take the excess off. You can do it with a knife or you can do it with your fingers, because I'm going to pinch it all closed. Just take that excess off. Maybe a knife would help here. Just like that. All the way around. Trying to be like a pastry carpenter in the kitchen here. Get that all off. And now what you want to do is have your oven on at 375 degrees. Now, we want to brush this a little bit with an egg wash. So you take all this excess dough, because you're going to save that for something else. I'm going to make those cookies I told you about. So let me move that aside. And we have an egg. Let me push this down a little bit. Kind of get the top even so it's all nice and even looking. Okay, I think that looks good. Now our egg. Crack one more egg. Give that a little swift mix. Your oven is on at 375 degrees. You brush the top gently, just to give this a little color in the oven. And just to ensure that there are no spills with this, I would put it on some type of a baking sheet, but I think this is going to be fine. So 375 degrees, preheated for about 50 to 55 minutes. When a cake skewer goes in there and it comes out clean, it's done. And when it's done, you let it cool, and it'll look like this. So now what you need to do is go around the outside of this pan with a knife to loosen it. You want this to come out in one piece. Go all the way around, say a prayer, and carefully lift off the top. And there you have it. The Neapolitan pastiera made the traditional way with wheat berries. What would Pasqua, Easter, be without the pastiera, the traditional wheat berry pie that comes from Naples? And today I made it for you. And we started with a pasta frolla crust, a shortcut pastry. We lined a beautiful springform pan with it. And then we made a filling of fresh ricotta cheese, wheat berries, sugar, cinnamon, and orange flavoring. And now it's all ready for the feast. Have it for every day, or certainly have it for Easter. Buona Pasqua. And until I see you nella cucina again, I'm Marianne Esposito. Ciao.